Hi, folks. This is actually a much bigger conference than I expected. I saw the program and everyone else said SGML in their presentation, and I thought it was going to be like 10 Richard Stallmans in a circle. So knowing it's not that, I feel a lot better. So I'm not a ritual sacrifice in that case. I'm Alex. I'm from the Public Knowledge Project at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, Canada. You might know us as developers of Open Journal Systems and now Open Monograph Press. And we also offer journal hosting services and editorial training initiatives, mostly focused in the Global South, where budgets are limited for editorial production. XML and us is not the most esteemed track record, necessarily. OJS has been around for a good decade now. And the focus in OJS has always been on article review, process, editorial supports, publication, indexing, basically everything but the actual document prep. And this is something that people still don't realize when they're downloading it. They're like, oh, great, you can help me make my articles. And no, we can't. We can do everything else, but never really that. And so there are a handful of Open Journal Systems journals across the world that have done PubMed Central Deposit for the past several years. But each of them generally has their own XML contractor. Some of them kind of do it half in-house, half not. But the vast majority just kind of have their authors instructed to kind of generate PDF from Word and publish the PDF and call it a day. Which shouldn't sound terribly unsurprising if those of you know small budget journals elsewhere, but it's still a bummer, and it's awful for many reasons. So XML production. There are some supervised solutions you're probably familiar with. Microsoft Research put out a Word plugin 8 or 9 years ago that could actually help you kind of write into, I think, a NLM2 XML grid. That was a nice concept, but not widely used. Lemonade XML was PKP's own initiative around the same time, and it actually took a very similar approach where you had kind of like the barest WYSIWYG-ish thing in a browser that you could, again, use to kind of fudge content into NLM2 by dragging and dropping different sections, but it was, proof of concept didn't go very far because nobody wants to write that way. Surprise, surprise. And then there's manual markup, which is highly supervised in that it takes a lot of labor hours. And this is what you're doing probably with Oxygen or LaTeX at your own various shops. A lot of it's outsourced because the labor is so wildly inefficient that it usually can't be done at developed world rates. And it's probably underlying a lot of what you're going to hear about for the next couple of days. And that's fine because that's the best that we have for production quality work right now. Unsupervised solutions are generally not production quality. There's OxGarage, which is an Oxford product project for converting any of several document formats through TEI, which is used as a kind of a middle interchange format, but we don't like TEI here. Boo, TEI, JATS. I actually detest TEI, so I'm happy to be here. We can all take a minute to say TEI is the worst, and I'm just kidding. But OxGarage is basically a platform that goes, Word through TEI to NLM3, or ODF through TEI to RTF. It works okay. It's never going to get you that kind of nice, smart JATS from a Word draft, just because it doesn't have that logic in it. But we'll get back to that in a bit. There's also Word and LibreOffice's direct HTML output, also known as the Antichrist. And there's Word and LibreOffice's PDF output, which is widely used because it works and you can print it. There's also Pandoc, which I'll get back to later on in this talk as well, which is a really nice open source tool for munging different document formats that recently added Word import and export. It's also not going to suddenly give you good markup, but it's a nice development. We'll talk about that too. So, perennial existential crisis. XML, really not good to edit by hand if you're a human being. It's 2015 and there's still no free software that makes that any better. I think, honestly, the fact that Oxygen XML is as widely used as it is basically a massive failure. Like, something is horribly wrong for the amount of hours that get put down in front of Oxygen. If I offend you, by the way, if you're a fan of both the Model UN seating arrangement and Khrushchev, feel free to take your shoe off and you can bang it on the table. I like Khrushchev. I hope you all do too. Sorry. Too much coffee and jet lag. And for some reason, people still don't use Markdown or Author in structured formats because Word is popular and people like Word, and I'm really sick of that being an excuse, but it is what it is. So a lot of journals that do not have the budget or otherwise unwilling to outsource don't produce structured articles still. That's a problem. The economics of, taking a author Word draft and turning it into something useful are terrible, and they've been terrible for a while. That production cost is just unreasonable, given that, in theory, it wouldn't be that hard to start with a non-garbage input and be able to work with it a lot more easily. But it's been, garbage in and really nice product out for a long time. And the expression's usually garbage in, garbage out. And the fact that garbage is not coming out speaks to how much work is being done by folks in this room. But it's too much work, frankly, for a lot of people still. A fully automated solution for going from Word to production quality manuscripts has not been possible and won't be possible because it's Word. But we can help with this. So the Public Knowledge Project MO, or the PKP MO, is that many of these journals that run our software that we host fit into this category where they're not going to outsource because they don't want to or can't afford it or some combination thereof. Even though, by the way, I've found that production rates are remarkably cheap given the labor involved. I've dealt with some of those kind of outsourcing conversations, and they are remarkably affordable, which is scary in some respects. But anyhow, we don't think that we're going to be the ones to finally get authors to move off of Word. We don't have the budget or the UX or anything like that at the uptake to make like the end-all be-all JATS WYSIWYG system, though it would be nice if someone did, really. But that's not our focus. We can't do that. We know we can't do that. But we can make this process maybe a little more sane, we hope. So here is the new PKP XML parsing service. That's a demo URL in the screenshot, but it will work. It's pkpudev.lib.sfu.ca. And this is the front end to our new unsupervised automated XML parsing stack. This stack contains a number of tools I'm going to tell you about. It's right now in heavy demo phase still. We've been working on it for only a couple of years. It's not going to get you production quality stuff, but we're going to get you part of the way there, and that's going to be a major improvement. Fully open source. It's a modular solution that basically contains a number of different open source libraries daisy-chained together with some other work on the side to provide a good comprehensive article parse. So we've got in there, and I'll go through these individually later on, we've got Parsit, LibreOffice, Pandoc, and so on and so forth. Right now, the core parsing engine is something called meTypeset, which was developed in partnership with and largely by Martin Eve at the Open Library of the Humanities. Martin Eve should have like the Henry Winkler billing for this talk, like the also starring the person you actually want to see. He's done most of the work on meTypeset. He maintains it. He's the guy. He's been a huge asset to this kind of work, and we'll get back to that later. But meTypeset is kind of the guts that does most of the heavy lifting for getting from Word docx to JATS XML. And meTypeset itself, I'll get to that actually, never mind. Here is a list of the modules in our stack, basically per the GitHub documentation. So you can see we first convert to docx if we get an ODF or a doc submission, for example. We then convert the docx as a first parse to NLM XML. This was targeting NLM 3. It's going to be JATS soon. We do some reference parsing. We get some bibtech from the references. We style the bibtech and put it back into the JATS. We convert the whole thing to HTML. We style the HTML according to your chosen citation format. You get a PDF. The PDF gets XMP metadata embedded into it. It's all zipped up, and you can fetch it via an API. And this is all free. It's open source. So we do things like that. We hate money. We don't make any. We don't have any. It's great. It's the worst. Step one in the PKP XML parsing stack is LibreOffice, and we wrap LibreOffice in this little wrapper made by this Red Hat Linux maintainer from way back called UnoConv. We do this because sometimes we get submissions that are in doc or ODF or other Word compatible formats that aren't XML backed, like the old Word 97 doc format is a binary format and we can't do a thing with that. But in order to get us much better coverage for the documents that we can handle and parse, to at least get them into Word XML to start, we call LibreOffice from the command line. Because LibreOffice is written in Java, it's not very much fun to call from the command line by itself, so we use this unoconv wrapper to make that easier. That's step one. So after step one, we know we've got Word docx. The next thing we do, remember I mentioned Oxgarage earlier, this kind of Swiss Army knife for doing an adequate parse from one format to another? meTypeset is actually a fork of Oxgarage with a lot of painstakingly derived fuzzy parsing logic added in there to go from Word to JATS. So basically there's a ton and ton of little clauses in meTypeset that say, oh, you used alternating bold and underline indentation for some reason instead of using the dropdown in Word because Word has the worst UX known to man if you want a good structured output. Maybe you meant for this to be a section header. And it does things like that over and over again. And we spent a lot of time working on this. It's not a fancy machine learning solution. These are all rules that we derived ourselves, but we think they're really good, and they go a long way toward making what's in effect a straight unsupervised conversion from Word to JATS a lot more useful. Here's some code. I'm sorry, I put code in the presentation. You don't have to look at it. This is just an example of what meTypeset does. Here's kind of our nesting headings function. So again, we actually do go through and figure out whether, a given section header is supposed to be on level X or level X sub 1, and we try to work it out that way based on the fonts that are used, way Word styles are actually maybe used to match those fonts in certain cases, the things you'd know if you were used to trying to munge useful text out of a Word document. Similarly, we also go through a document and we try to link inline references to the bibliography, which is actually a really neat thing we do. If you've used Zotero or Mendeley or EndNote to write your document, those aren't in the Word XML DTD. So if you pass it through Oxgarage, those will just come out as gobbledygook because Oxgarage is written against the Word DTD and knows how to convert the elements that it expects in a Word document. Those are basically extra. They're just additional XML elements added by different programs, and we can use those. So we've actually written parsers against, Zotero, Mendeley, EndNote citations, which makes our job of trying to go through the document and link inline references to the bibliography a lot easier. meTypeset also has an interactive CLI mode for kind of correcting those references. We're going to be turning that CLI mode into a web front end at some point that go into our web front end. And you can also currently supply known good front matter as basically additional command line arguments to meTypeset, because sometimes you've got good front matter. You can actually ask an author to give you good front matter. You can't ask an author to give you a structured document. So if you don't want to have to rely on the parsing for that component, you don't have to. And meTypeset is written primarily in Python and XSL. Codebase is pretty friendly. You have to kind of, if you're looking at it straight, you have to know where to look because it is just Oxgarage and then one directory containing all of our fuzzy logic. So if you don't know where that is, you're not going to be able to work on it straight away. But it's reasonably easy to hack on. So if you have any inclination to do that, that would be great. Pull requests are welcomed. The next step in our stack, so now we've taken, whatever we've gotten as a Word compatible format, and we've got a first pass into JATS, is parse-it. Parse-it is one of a handful of open source reference parsers. We use this in our stack because when we started building our stack in 2013, it was the only one that seemed to be still actively developed, although that's no longer true. I know there's something called Bilbo that's also being worked on right now. And parse-it was reasonably easy to run locally. It's basically Perl and then a conditional random fields library. So it's got nice machine learning credentials. The output's pretty good. And so we take this and we run it on unstructured references to try to get structured references out of it. And the results are okay. We do have some old code laying around from OJS that compares the results of parse-it, Parasite, and one other reference parsing library and tries to choose the best one automatically based on the results of all three. We haven't implemented that into our new stack yet because we did find that parse-it was pretty easily outperforming the others, but we're going to revisit that later on. Once we've got parsit, we basically take those structured citations, run them through BibTeX, and paste them back into the JATS and stuff you really don't care about unless you know about BibTeX and pasting reference information around. And then we use pandoc to style the references in the document itself. So I mentioned pandoc being a really cool document conversion tool that recently added Word support, though in theory it can convert Word to JATS as well. It doesn't have that fuzzy logic from meTypeset. You know, it won't make an effort to give you different heading structure or anything like that. But pandoc is a very useful library because it's entirely markdown based. And we can fairly easily feed it our JATS document that has basically additional XML elements added to say this reference should be linked to this reference. And pandoc can then walk over that. And it can link a given reference to bibliography using the kind of inline anchor link you'd expect to find in the HTML document. So pandoc is very nice for that. It's got built-in reference support because I believe it's actually maintained by an academic. It's also written in Haskell, which means you probably don't want to touch the pandoc code base unless you were burned in an acid accident in sometime in the 1980s and you're Batman. So it's unlikely. After pandoc, we've got our nice linked references. They're all styled nicely. We do a direct conversion to HTML of the article from the JATS using our own style sheet. We then directly print the HTML to PDF. We could certainly do a nicer job of writing a PDF transform. Right now we basically call like a fake WebKit background browser printer thing to do a straight HTML to PDF conversion, so we can at least say we're offering HTML and PDF. But the brunt of the work so far has gone to the actual HTML conversion, and again, we can improve that. When we get the PDF, we can embed nice XMP metadata into it, which is something that publishers have started doing in the past several years. It makes it easier to ingest a PDF into Zotero or Mendeley because they can then parse the metadata directly out of the XMP. It's basically a PDF metadata standard that's been not so widely used, but is nice when you have it. And there's a little command line program called exiftool, which is also open source, maintained by some academic somewhere, that's mainly used for getting metadata out of images, or sometimes adding metadata to images. And because PDF is sometimes an image format, exiftool can also add XMP metadata to PDFs. So again, a nice little open source tool that we found that we knew would work for this purpose that we've dropped into our stack. So we've been reasonably creative, I feel, in kind of finding a bunch of these various open source tools that will get you part of the way there, provided that you can write the handoffs between them and kind of fudge the style sheets where possible. And then meTypeset does the brunt of that conversion for us. So once that's all done, we have HTML that comes out looking something like this. This is basically one of the bootstrap layouts we wrote just as a proof of concept. You've got nice kind of sidebar navigation for the document. You've got parsed tables and a section header. You know, not rocket science, but actually pretty good HTML with navigable table of contents from a Word document is pretty good. We've got PDF that comes out looking like this. And again, you can see this is the most recent GNOME Linux PDF reader, so the UI is probably not that familiar. But on the left-hand side, you can also see it was able to actually get a table of contents in the PDF that you can jump between. References are styled like that. This is, again, a direct conversion from the HTML, but it's pretty usable for a PDF that was converted directly from HTML and has XMP metadata. So we're pretty happy with our output right now. It could stand to get a lot better. Like I said, there's never really going to be a good way to get production quality JATS directly from an author's Word submission because of how awful Word is. But we're pretty confident that with this solution, we can get you like 80% of the way there. I feel like that's a reasonable estimate. And for those of you who are currently undertaking full manual XML markup, and I don't think that's many people in most rooms, but I feel like it's a lot of people in this room, that could be hugely useful for time savings. And so, you know, for those of you who are already undertaking this work, I think this is extra meaningful. Here's just a little screenshot of basically the plugin we made for our system within OpenJournal systems, because we thought we may as well integrate our nice XML stack with OJS. So you can basically have OJS, if you're running OpenJournal systems already, hook into our XML parsing server, and make it so that anytime a Word document is uploaded as an author draft or as a final version you want to publish, it automatically returns HTML and PDF from our document server. This is me logged into that demo instance I linked earlier in my talk. The main thing I wanted to show off here is that if you look down in the middle column where all these different jobs were created, we see at the top it's in April 13th, the bottom's in April 7th, and I checked on April 13th. We were out of funding to work on this for the past 6 months, and it still gets hits and traffic and people testing out how well it parses documents, which I think is terrific, because we have not been giving this the work we'd have liked to lately due to funding issues, and it seems to still have legs. Obviously, it's not being used in any significant volume right now, but I'm genuinely happy that this seems to be widely used and is kind of getting to be a known quantity. Here's a little bit of our API documentation. If you didn't want to use that jobs interface in the website, you can basically just post a document with credentials you sign up for on the site, along with a chosen citation style, and you will get back that document parsed into JATS with citations styled as best we can according to your selection. If the server is not busy, that takes about 2 minutes, so feel free to hit it yourself and see how it works out. Future work. So we've just gotten a third funding round, which is great. I originally came here expecting to have to beg for a third funding round from all of you wonderful people, but now I don't have to anymore. Ha! Just kidding. Funding would be great. We don't have any money, as I mentioned. But we have a little bit of money, so we're about to undertake a third funding round. One of our priorities is keeping to work on meTypeset. As I mentioned, it's all manually derived logic, and we could always add more of that. We're starting to hit diminishing returns, certainly from that approach. That 80% threshold is probably not going to be particularly easy to cross, but we've gotten it pretty far. We want to keep working on that. We want to modularize our stack to be able to use multiple parsing engines and compare the results. I mentioned we used to have a solution for comparing the results of different citation parsers. We want to be able to get this stack to a point where it can compare the results of different article body parsers as well. So meTypeset is going to be hard to push past where it is right now. There are other parsing engines we might use, other machine learning based parsing engines that try to do the same thing. They go from an unstructured docx or PDF to JATS. One of which is developed in Poland. Sermine is basically a Java solution to going from PDF to JATS. It's mostly focused on front matter parsing. Its front matter parsing currently widely outperforms meTypeset. We'd like to drop this in there and be able to say, okay, you're going to get part of your JATS from one engine, part of your JATS from another, and we write kind of a very simple comparison framework to figure out when one performs better on a different part of the document. This is going to be a big focus for our next funding round, kind of doing a bunch of automated tests and seeing if we can make that decision in real time. We also, as I mentioned just now, want to have better automated evaluation. So because meTypeset development has been largely rule-based and largely manual, we haven't had to have like a good test server going, but we want to have a good test server. We want to provide a testing corpus of both kind of author-submitted Word documents and good marked-up JATS that we can, A, circulate freely so other folks can have that corpus to build against, but B, let that improve our own design direction if we go in a more machine learning oriented direction with parsing approaches hereafter. Here's a little snapshot of Sermine's results on parsing front matter. So this is that new Java-based solution I mentioned for going from PDF to JATS instead of docx to JATS. We had them retrain Sermine on some of our messy open journal systems author corpus because they'd originally written it against reasonably well-structured scientific publications that expect it would have pretty good metadata. We were able to get an overall improvement of 20% precision on all metadata elements after retraining it. And so again, you're seeing numbers around the 80–85% area for front matter parsing precision from automated solution. That's going to be hard to top, but again, if you're already doing markup, 80%, really not bad. So look for Sermine in our stack pretty soon. Here's a brief sales pitch after I offended all of you. meTypeset has already been implemented by the University of Michigan's MPAC production system for HathiTrust. They were trying out their own XML solutions and they liked ours best. So that's a pretty good pat in the back. We had been out of money for this project for most of the past year, as I mentioned. We're still getting testers. So this is, again, it's getting legs. It's got some uptake. People are using it. meTypeset is going to keep getting developed. That's just meTypeset, mind you, not the entire PKP stack. But all the same, this is starting to show some dividends as far as use is concerned. We've also got development partners at Heidelberg University in Germany who are working on that elusive WYSIWYG editor. This is because there's never going to be a perfect result. We're going to need to have a cleanup stage if we don't want to expect all users to then dump the output into Oxygen and do that usual horrible manual markup process afterwards. So we are trying, God help us, to add API hooks at least so that a WYSIWYG cleanup editor could be built to kind of smooth over some places where our parsing engine doesn't succeed currently. Most of this work is being done in Heidelberg, not by us, but we are making sure that we're accommodating any WYSIWYG features that might be added because it's not been a focus of ours so far. I just said that. Their editor is also TEI backed. Boo, TEI, boo. But we can reasonably easily write style sheets. If you want to help, which would be great, as I mentioned, the entire stack is open source. We couldn't GPL license the thing the way we did most of the other public knowledge projects because there's just too much in there and it's a bunch of different open source dependencies. But that's probably good news for anybody who is hoping to be able to kind of BSD this thing and make some money off of it, and that's fine. We welcome any work you want to put into it. Funding is also great. Projected deliverables for kind of this next funding cycle we've just begun. We want to produce a real grounded efficiency study of time savings when an existing full production shop uses our system to start the markup process and gets that 80% bit rather than just starting from scratch with a Word document or whatever their existing process is. We want to actually be able to say people have saved this much time and money on doing this work. We also want to provide that testing corpus I mentioned, as well as some automated tests for evaluating how well the parsing is done. We like the robot framework for that. If any of you know that, that's great too. That's it for me. Keeping it brief because there was a lot of gobbledygook in there. Again, thanks to Martin Eve, who really is the maintainer and primary developer of meTypeset. And thanks to Stanford University's Media X Incubator and Kanika Minolta, who have funded the lion's share of this work to date. Questions? Yes.
Hi, Dana Wheelis from Silverchair. So I like this idea of getting it into JATS, right? But there are so many flavors of JATS. In addition to the three sort of main flavors, each host has its own house style. So how easy is it for someone to intervene and impose some sort of styling or preferences on outputting JATS?
Right. That's a really good question. We started out targeting NLM3, and we've kind of been transitioning it over to green JATS since then. By and large, we've always kind of proceeded under the expectation that the NLM produces reasonably good style sheets for converting between their own formats, and we can duct tape it here and there if we need to. So once we already have, at least one NLM compliant format, getting the rest is doable on our end.
Why green, not blue?
I can't remember. We made that choice at one point. I'd be happy to talk about it further, but I can't recall right now when we made the choice. Yes?
Does your process depend on Word styles being used or just a free-form Word document, or does it work better if it's a structured style Word document?
Thank you for asking that question. It does not depend whatsoever on Word styles, because if people used Word styles consistently, we wouldn't be in anywhere near this mess. Word styles help, because it uses that information along with, text size, bolding, and so on and so forth. But the author is not expected to conform to any kind of Word template, because again, if they could, we wouldn't have to do this in the first place. So thank you for asking that. Calvin.
Everyone knows me now because
Yes.
I'm a bit of a big mouth, but I must keep up my reputation. Thank you very much for the a lot of detail. meTypeset is great, and I have great respect for Martin, even others have. My criticism is I think you didn't go far enough to criticize Word, to say how bad it was. That's my only criticism. It's like we're like fish in the sea. Because nearly 100% of people use Microsoft Word, we think, well, that's the way the world is. Just because everyone does something. If you go to a country, for example, where people just litter the streets, you don't say, well, that's fine. That's the equivalent of littering the streets. I'm sorry. Did I give the impression I don't like Microsoft Word? I don't want to be too partisan on this. But seriously, and this goes beyond publishing. Basically, the whole world is putting the knowledge, everything into a page-based typewriter kind of thing, and then a whole industry, including yours and including mine, I've got hundreds of people, reverse engineering what they were trying to say. I'm really depressed. If I'm not here tomorrow, it's your fault. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I've been trying to get everyone to author in HyperCard for the past 20 years, and no one listens.
HyperCard?
HyperCard.
Oh, yeah, HyperCard's dead. Apple killed it.
That's okay. You know what? I still have got a Mac Plus in the closet. It works
Good
great.
for you.
8 megahertz. Raw whining power. Word is awful. Thank you for saying that. I'm depressed too. Yes.
I'm not here to defend Word. But I think we have to remember that people use Word because Word does what they want it to do. And what they want to do is they want to write something, and they don't want to fill out a form, and they don't want to do any other crap. They want to write it down and make it look like they want it to look, and that's their need. What we really need, now we're unhappy with it because it doesn't meet our needs, but it meets their needs as authors. What we really have to come up with is something that will meet their needs and our needs. What that is, I have no idea.
I would like to argue that point that it meets their need. I would like to say that people use Word because they've been trained enough to know what to expect. That is not necessarily meeting the need, that's them dealing with what they have.
Well, it meets their needs better than anything else that they have.
I'm going to call on this man in back here who's not yelling about Word right now.
Daniel Lambert, American Society of Hematology. And so in the few circumstances you have documents that aren't in Word format, I'm wondering how you take over the conversion from there.
As I mentioned, we have that LibreOffice step at the start, which can basically take any Word-compatible format and then put it into docx, which is what meTypeset targets. So that would include, pretty much anything that kind of fits that Word paradigm of like a typewriter page, WYSIWYG editor. LibreOffice can handle these days. And again, its output to docx is really no worse than a native docx file, for better or for worse there. So everything gets smushed into docx before we start. I can't think of a non kind of Word compliant document we'd want to target with this approach. So I think that's pretty comprehensive for now. Any other questions? Yes.
If there's math in the Word document, can your process handle that?
We can not only handle it, but we had to ask Microsoft to make use of an XSL file an OpenXSL file they ship with Word 2007 for converting the Word math, whatever their weird MathML deviant format is, to actual MathML. And we thought that was really cool. We stumbled upon that. We were looking over like a Word install, and we said, oh my God, it's not obfuscated. It's an actual OpenXSL style sheet. That must be an accident. So I wrote a contact at Microsoft, and he said, yeah, go ahead and use it. We're not going to license it to you, but it's fine. So I thought that was pretty neat. And you're asking really good questions for me to actually talk about how much I like what we've done, so thank you, sir. Anything else? All right, thank you.